In this video, I'll discuss the spectacular, brilliantly constructed monothematic finale of Haydn's Opus 76 No. 1 string quartet in G major. This is an intense and substantive movement, making its frivolous, flippant, classic Haydn gag ending even more amusing and successful. This ending is one of my all-time favorite moments in Haydn's output, so please stick around until the end of the video. The movement opens with this aggressive G minor theme, played by all four instruments in octaves, consisting of this green triplet portion answered by this purple trilled portion. The viola immediately repeats the theme, now combined with this orange counter theme with accents on the weak second quarter note of the bar. Notice that the green figure this time incorporates an inverted portion of the new orange figure, and that the orange figure incorporates an inverted portion of the purple figure, though without the trills. In this video from 5 years ago, I discussed another of Haydn's many brilliant monothematic sonata forms, the finale of his Opus 74 No. 1 quartet, in which the four contrasting themes are all just variants of the same opening theme. This movement is somehow even more economical, since nearly every bar is related to these three components of the opening theme, and the thematic transformations are astonishing. The green figure will return sometimes as this initial 6-note motif, sometimes as this shorter 4-note motif, sometimes as just the opening triplet, and sometimes as just the answering falling notes. These motifs also often occur inverted or upside down, though I won't label the inversions in this video. The trilled purple figure also returns in various forms and their inversions, including just simplified alternating notes, differently ornamented versions, a rhythmic augmentation, an even slower rhythmic augmentation, and a few other rhythmically camouflaged variants. Finally, the less important orange figure returns mostly as a rhythmic motif, with its distinctive accents on the weak second quarter note of the bar. After this unexpectedly harsh opening theme, after all, the overall key of the quartet is G major, and all three of its previous movements are in the major mode, Haydn immediately modulates to the expected relative major key of B flat, using three of the green motifs I just mentioned. First the 6-note fragments, then the 4-note fragments, and then just the triplets. Whenever these triplets occur in configurations that don't as closely resemble the opening theme, I'll give them this slightly darker green color. Now listen up to this point when the modulation to B-flat major has been well established, and remember that in the era of Haydn and Mozart, sonata forms in minor keys usually modulated not to the dominant, but to the relative major. I'm dubbing this portion we just heard the Rossini moment, because of its similarity to the hilarious patter-song ending of Figaro's most famous aria from the Barber of Seville, composed a few decades later.
Avrò Figaro bravo bravissimo, avrò Figaro bravo bravissimo, fortunatissimo, 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 non mancherà. La 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 bravo bravissimo, fortunatissimo, 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 non mancherà. Solo il factotum della città.
Before going on, let me reiterate how unusual it is for Haydn to end a major mode quartet with a minor mode finale. The C major quartet from this same opus, Opus 76 No. 3, is his only other example of this, with its similarly unexpected, intense C minor finale. And remember what I said in this prior video, that Opus 76 and Haydn's late quartets in general are some of his most experimental works. The opposite situation, major mode finales for minor mode compositions, is much more frequent in Haydn's works. For example, of his 11 minor mode symphonies, the last 3, numbers 95, 83, and 80, and one of the earlier ones, number 34, have major mode final movements. But of his 12 string quartets in the minor mode, only one, opus 55 number 2, has a major mode finale, though I suppose we'll never know for his final unfinished quartet, opus 103 in D minor, since that finale was never composed. Returning to opus 76 number 1, the second theme, in the relative major, is just a reworking of the opening theme, beginning with the 6-note motif answered by this new blue material, and combined with imitative entries of the 6-note motif, and this spaced-out entry of the purple alternating note figure. Notice also that the character of the theme has completely changed, from the stormy opening to this now playful transformation. Now comes another reworking of the theme that I'm calling Playful Theme Number 2, consisting of inverted green motifs, the simplified purple motif, and the orange rhythmic motif all at once. The cello plays less important accompaniment until it also enters with the theme. These are two of my favorite bars in the Exposition section, possibly because of this 5-7 of 4 secondary dominant chord with these suspensions. The cello now repeats Playful Theme Number 2 with the violins playing the purple motif and its inversion, now with new ornaments and the accented rhythms of the orange motif. I love showing cello and viola passages like this to the surprisingly large number of string players who believe that Haydn quartets are boring to play unless you're the first violinist. If your only exposure to this magnificent repertoire is occasionally sight-reading slow movements from the Opus 1 quartets at wedding gigs, I can understand having this misconception. But in Haydn's greatest quartets, like this one, nothing could be further from the truth. Notice that I interrupted the music during the rhythmic augmentation of the purple motif in the cello, which is now repeated at its original faster speed, but camouflaged with the triplets of the green figures, leading to this B-flat major cadence. The cheerful mood is now startlingly interrupted by what I'm calling the spooky interlude, consisting of the forzato orange rhythmic motif, answered by the purple motif and its inversion. This passage reminds me of the rhetorically similar spooky interlude from the brilliant finale of the Opus 74 No. 2 quartet, composed about 3 years earlier. Returning to Opus 76 No. 1, the spookiness is short-lived and the exposition section ends with a closing theme, Playful Theme No. 3, that is very similar to Playful Theme No. 2, just without the orange accented rhythms. Now listen to this closing theme and then the repeat of the entire exposition section without my interruptions. The development section begins with two statements of the opening theme in B-flat minor and F minor, and notice this hilarious response from the cello, ending on its lowest note. Haydn now continues to repurpose the variants from the exposition section, including playful theme number 1 with its blue answering portion and its imitative bouncy staccato green entries. But notice how the articulation and mood completely change in this bar, when time seems to slow down as the cello plays this mysterious double rhythmic augmentation of the purple motif, so now 4 times as slowly, while the violins play legato entries of just the final arpeggio portion of the green motif. You can imagine the beginning triplet portions continuing from the prior section, if it helps you recognize these as transformations of the theme. This eerie, slower-moving interruption is also short-lived, as the imitative bouncy staccato green entries return. For the final intense climax of the development section, Haydn uses the shorter 4-note motif, repeated by all 4 instruments in octaves with forzati on every beat, culminating in this terrifying fortissimo dominant minor 9th chord. This build-up repeats, and the fortissimo chord is even more intense the second time, with this low D from the cello, preparing for the G minor recapitulation in the next bar. We just heard the recapitulation section begin not how the exposition began, with all 4 instruments playing the theme in octaves, but with the theme as it repeats in the exposition section, played only by the viola accompanied by the orange countertheme. The repeat of the theme is now replaced with the staccato imitative entries from playful theme number 1 and the development section, and Haydn also brings back my favorite hilarious cello figure from the development. The final purple figure repeats, but now ending with this completely unexpected dramatic pause with fermatas on the final 2 notes. dramatic halt like this is completely out of place at this point in a Haydn recapitulation section, but it allows him to introduce a completely new transformation of the original theme. Now finally, for the first time this entire movement, in G major, the key of the overall composition. I'm calling this the tranquil grace note variant, and the dazzling cantabile first violin melody briefly transports us to a dreamlike existence until this rising chain of triplets returns from the exposition section to bring us back to reality. The remainder of the recapitulation section proceeds mostly as expected, so listen up to the closing theme right before the coda. We've finally made it to my favorite part of this quartet, the brilliant coda section. The closing theme we just heard leads to this crescendoing whirlwind of arpeggios that tricks us into thinking we're headed for some sort of high-energy conclusion, but instead, after this dramatic dominant seventh chord, we get another unexpected silence, setting the stage for the final surprise thematic transformation that I'll discuss shortly. Before we hear possibly Haydn's most hilarious gag ending, it's time for this channel's first ever call to action. As you might know, many of Haydn's most beloved works have been assigned popular nicknames over the years, including, for example, 4 of the other 5 quartets from this opus. But I've long thought that this G major quartet deserves a nickname of its own. So from now on, I propose that we all start calling it the Jack-in-the-Box Quartet, because of the joke ending we're about to hear. Now, there's no governing body that decides what constitutes a legitimate nickname for a piece of classical music. Most often, these nicknames arise organically over the years and gain legitimacy by popular approval. So, even as the self-appointed Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of Haydn fanatics, I alone do not have the power to coin a new nickname. But with our powers combined, I think we can make this happen simply by using the new nickname whenever we refer to this quartet in the future. And for some added incentive, anyone who officially uses this nickname in program notes, blogs, or dare I say, in an academic paper, I pledge to upload a special video publicizing whatever your thing was. Just email it to me. So, what is a jack-in-the-box? Allow me to demonstrate. As you can see, the point of this toy is to deliver a terrifying jump scare to unsuspecting children. And coincidentally, Haydn happens to be the master of the musical jump scare. For example, in perhaps his most famous nicknamed work, Symphony No. 94, the With a Timpani Blow Symphony, I'm kidding, the Surprise Symphony, he musically lulls the listener to sleep by repeating pianissimo the already piano theme, and then of course the jump scare, or surprise, or Paukenschlag. already discussed a similar Haydn jump scare, the bassoon fart joke from Symphony No. 93, in this prior video, and if you listen to enough Haydn, you'll start noticing them everywhere. For example, even the previous movement of this same Opus 76 No. 1 quartet ends with one. Finally returning to this Coda section from the finale, Haydn just left us hanging with this fortissimo dominant 7th chord and rests. What follows is the most dramatic transformation yet, that of course I'm calling the Jack-in-the-Box variant, with the first violin playing this whimsical inversion of the opening green theme, so now upside down, accompanied by pizzicato or plucked variants of the purple figure and its inversion. Notice that the purple figure played by the second violin is just a simplified outline of the green theme the first violin is playing, so it's hard to know which color to assign. Now, the first violin climbs higher and higher in register as the music crescendos to this jump scare forte chord, after which everything comes tumbling to the ground with these falling scales. The new variant now repeats, but this time with the jump scare marked as fortissimo to make it even more dramatic the second time. I'm not sure if anyone else has ever compared this moment to a Jack-in-the-Box. The closest thing I could find was this Naxos CD that aptly includes Haydn's Surprise Symphony. But the jump scare from this Coda section isn't the only thing about it that reminds me of a Jack-in-the-Box. The pizzicato accompaniment, with its clock-like tick-tock of alternating notes, sounds strikingly similar to this mechanism inside a Jack-in-the-Box, with its plucked metal prongs. And while I'm talking about nicknames, remember that Haydn's Clock Symphony from a few years earlier is so nicknamed because of the identical tick-tock accompaniment in its second movement. Another reason this coda reminds me of a Jack-in-the-Box is that these repeated inverted green figures are so similar to these figures from the tune played by most modern Jack-in-the-Box toys, Pop Goes the Weasel. And finally, the note-for-note identical repeat of this 8-bar theme, only changing the dynamic markings the second time, almost suggests that the Jack-in-the-Box is being reset during these intervening rests for another go. Now that I've given you my best arguments for this new nickname, critics might be wondering whether it would have been anachronistic in Haydn's time. The short answer is that it doesn't really matter, since we won't be using the nickname in his time. But, yes, there were mechanical Jack-in-the-Box toys in Europe before Haydn's lifetime, as well as mechanical music boxes. However, my cursory internet sleuthing could not confirm that any 18th century Jack-in-the-Box toys played music at all, let alone that they played Pop Goes the Weasel, though that tune likely did exist at the time. If I happen to have an antique toy expert in my audience, please leave a comment if you can answer either of those questions. And now for a final, completely unrelated tangent. Notice the faux bourdon texture of these falling scales after the jump scare. And compare with these upward scales from the finale of Beethoven's Opus 2 No. 3 Piano Sonata, composed around the same time as this Haydn quartet, and of course, dedicated to Haydn. Back to Haydn, listen one more time to this coda, truly the most Haydnesque moment in all of Haydn, in which he chose to conclude one of his most substantial, serious masterpieces with a frivolous, flippant jack-in-the-box joke. And lastly, remember the call to action.